Obesity, it's a big deal, and it's growing in America. The numbers of obese people are rising, and it's becoming a big issue, such as the increase in numbers of type 2 diabetes and heart disease and multiple different types of cancer. So have you ever thought about what is exactly the science behind obesity and what's exactly going on in your head when you eat? Well, luckily for you, my name is Melissa Few, and I'm going to show you a few of those things today and hopefully be able to give you a little bit more knowledge about the science behind hunger and obesity. So I hope you enjoy. Symptoms of obesity are pretty self-explanatory. You might put your jeans on one day and figure out that you're not able to button up the pants. Also, you might be in bed a lot. Maybe you broke your leg and you're immobile for a while, but you continue to eat the same way that before you broke your leg. You might gain weight there as well. Basically, anything that will make you eat more calories than burn calories will make you gain weight.
Je suis enchanté.
When asked what causes obesity, the first thing people think of is, well, they eat too much. Calories in versus calories out. It's basic physics. And yes, this is true. Turns out there's a lot more behind obesity than just simply how much calories they eat. Granted, someone eats a whole lot, they will gain weight, but turns out there is a boatload of things that go on in your body that determine how much food you really do eat. And luckily for you, I'm going to go into that right now. But first, let's go ahead and look into metabolism, which is how your body gets energy from that big slice of pizza. Or if you're a vegetarian, a bowl of macaroni and cheese. Or if you're vegan, a really nice salad. So let's go ahead and see what goes on with metabolism. Alright, so we have this pizza that I'm drawing right here. And this is going to be turned into energy, or ATP, which is essential to use for your brain. Yay! So, how do we get there? First off, it's important to look at the pizza here. And this is going to be digested by enzymes into glucose, which is the primary source of ATP. And I'm just going to draw out that glucose molecule for you right there. Yeah, very nice. Or sugar. And it's essential for this glucose to get inside the cell. And see, it can't get inside because glucose is big and it can't get in by itself. So what is the cell going to do? It needs energy. Well, in comes insulin. Insulin comes on in and it says, no fret, glucose, I got your back, dude. And it's just gonna help glucose get inside the cell. See, now glucose is inside the cell. Everyone's happy. The cell can go about its day metabolizing that glucose into ATP, letting you do stuff. So what happens when we see pizza? As you can see here, I draw another pizza. And yay, food, yum. So you see food, and this is you eat the food, and this increases your blood glucose, like I said before. And here I'm gonna draw a little glucose inside the cell, and it's able to go in there because of insulin. And over time, all that blood glucose is going to keep going into that cell due to insulin. But eventually, we're going to run out of blood glucose, and that's going to decrease because they're inside the cell, so insulin will naturally decrease. And due to the decrease of insulin, this is going to promote hunger. Yay, we're hungry again. We need more blood glucose. Okay, so what if, for instance, the body has too much glucose in its cells? And it's not able to metabolize all of it? Well, we're able to convert that glucose into glycogen, which is stored in the liver. This is a really great way of storing energy in case we need it. But let's say, for instance, as we saw before, when we bring all that glucose into the cells and they are being metabolized and we need more blood glucose, as you saw before, the body has this really great thing that it's able to convert glycogen into glucose, and that is called glucagon. And that converts the glycogen back into glucose. And as you can see, the cell is happy, yay, because it has glucose, it's able to metabolize and get more ATP and energy. Therefore, high levels of insulin, always, is going to make the glucose is going to make the glucose go into the cell at rates very, 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 very fast. Therefore, you'll have low blood glucose. And because there's high glucose in the cells, this is going to produce a lot of glycogen. And all that glycogen is being stored in that liver, and there's just more and more glucose coming in the cells, and there's just more and more glycogen filling up the liver until it just doesn't have enough room, and it's like, what the hell? What do I do with all this glycogen? What am I gonna do? It doesn't know what to do with it. But the body, of course, has a way of fixing that problem, and that is what we don't really like, but the liver converts that extra stored glycogen into fat, therefore weight. Now that we got the introduction to metabolism, or my least favorite part of biochemistry, let's go ahead and move into the different brain areas that are important for your hunger and satiety, or fullness. All right, here we have the brain. Here it is drawn nicely, and the big part of the brain that is in controlling of food is the hypothalamus. And it has three parts of the hypothalamus that's important for eating. One is the PVN, one is the LH, and one is the VMH. And these all control different parts of eating. The PVN controls satiety or fullness. The LH is in control of just eating, wanting to eat. And the VMH is also in control of satiety. So it's important to note, if you damage the PVN, this is going to make you want to eat larger meals. If you damage the LH, this is going to allow you to eat less, or you're going to be reduced eating. And the VMH, you are going to be eating more frequently. But there's a fun fact to be known about damage to the VMH, and that is, as you can see here, you can only get damage or increased frequency of eating if you damage the VMH past that area. So if you just damage the VMH, that's not going to do anything unless you extend out of that area. In that case, you will decrease your eating. So we have our brain and metabolism that can contribute to see how much food that we want to eat. Well, what else makes us hungry in our bodies? Let's check that out right now. So let's talk long term. How does your body know when it has enough fat or has too little of it? Well, in comes a wonderful little thing called leptin. And leptin is great because it increases when there's high amounts of fat. And this, in turn, causes your body to eat less or decrease your eating, which is wonderful. And as you can imagine, it's just the same. If there's not a whole lot of fat and you're under eating, you just eat more, which is a great little way of your body being able to figure out in long term if it needs to increase its eating or decrease it. Another mechanism that you can use for your body determining if it's hungry or not is the stomach. And after a while and the stomach has been empty, it's going to be upset. It's going to be like, help, I'm hungry. So it's going to phone a friend. And this friend is the brain. And in order to phone the brain, it needs to give ghrelin a call. And ghrelin is a wonderful hormone that also calls the brain and lets it know at the hypothalamus, like, hey dude, I'm hungry, give me some food. Ghrelin is also makes that really terrible growling sound that you hear sometimes when you're hungry. And your brain receives that signal and it's like, all right, cool, eat your food, person, and you eat. The last issue of what makes you hungry is one of my favorite, and that's just being social, being human beings. You probably realize by now that you go out on the weekends and you spend time with friends, and all of a sudden the next minute you know you've eaten 5 gallons of ice cream and 2 whole pizzas. It's just social, being social, going out and eating with friends. You eat more, and it's proven. When you do have people around each other, they tend to eat more calories than if they were by themselves. So, you can blame your friends now to why you've gained weight. But as you'll see, and maybe as you've seen already, that's not exactly entirely true. Now that we've been able to see what exactly makes us hungry, let's go into more depth on what makes us stop eating. If eating is so awesome, why don't we just eat all the time? Turns out there's signals for that as well. Let's go into that. Okay, so big question. So what makes you full? What makes you stop eating when you are hungry? Good question. Okay, so remember the stomach. You can see here, it fills up with food and it stretches out and is distended. And turns out there's a little thing called the duodenum, which is the first part of the small intestine, and that receives fat signals inside of there from the food and phones a friend to the brain and the hypothalamus that we've said before, and this friend phone is called the vagus nerve. And the duodenum is going to phone the brain and the hypothalamus through the vagus nerve and say like, hey dude, I'm full. And then the brain's like, okay, cool, got you, we'll stop eating now. Another way that your body knows if it's full is the duodenum secretes a neurotransmitter called CCK. CCK can do two things. Number one, it can shorten or make the sphincter between the duodenum and the stomach smaller, allowing for the stomach to fill quicker and also for the stomach to shrink. Number two, it is able to phone a friend, remember that, through the vagus nerve to the hypothalamus saying, hey dude, I'm full, stop eating so much. So the brain listens. So you might be thinking, well, if you just have reduced levels of CCK, will that cause someone that's skinny to turn into someone who's fat? Wrong, that's not true. Turns out that if you have CCK, that's only short effects. That's not long-term effects. In other words, if you reduce the amount of CCK, you'll eat small meal that time, but the next time you'll just end up eating a large meal. So something like we've touched on before is high levels of blood glucose. This also has the ability to tell the brain to stop eating as much. And what this does is the high blood glucose is able to trigger into the hypothalamus, more specifically the arcuate nucleus, which I'm writing here. And this tells the hypothalamus or the arcuate nucleus to, and it receives a signal obviously, but it's going to go ahead and release more insulin, which is going to allow for that blood glucose to be taken into the cells and metabolized into ATP. Another thing that we can use is leptin, like we talked about before. If there's high levels of leptin, there's high fat. So it tells the brain as well, hey, stop eating as much. One thing that you also might be thinking of is psychological issues. People who depress tend to eat more, right? Turns out that's not exactly the case. It says right here that 19% of the people who have history of depression are obese, compared to 15% of obese people who have never suffered from depression. So in layman's terms, this basically just means there's not a difference between people who are depressed and overweight and people who are just overweight and have never been depressed in their lives. How do we fix obesity? Good question. Science has proven that the best combination is just good diet and good exercise. Yeah, I know, it's pretty lukewarm, but it's true. Also, maintaining exercise and good diet will increase your moods, make you happier, make you live longer. There's so many other things that go along with just eating healthier and exercising well. So there you have it. There's the simple outline of the science of obesity. I hope you learned a thing or two, and maybe you're able to tell a few friends some things that you've learned and not laugh too hard at my corny jokes and my terrible newscaster voice. That being said, I'm really excited for the next few years. New studies are being done on this stuff all the time, and new information is being brought out, and science is just going places I've never even thought it would in my short years on this planet. So I'm really excited to see what's going to happen next. So until next time, Melissa Few out. Coffee. That's cold coffee.
45, 5, 5, 5.